The 629th edition of the Four Corners podcast starts right now.
This is the Four Corners podcast.
Elton ready on his second attempt. That one is no good. They battle for it. Loose ball. Recovered Marvin. He scores. 17 seconds left. And he was fouled. Here we go. Lawson with a runner. No. The rebound. Hansbrough at the gun. Got it.
They were 4 for 24.
Hansbrough on a switch on Paulus. A deep three. And Green rips down the rebound in traffic. 4-on-1.
What a great job. What a terrific job in transition. I mean, you couldn't plan that any better as a coach.
Tipped away by Johnson. It's loose. Page. Johnson.
They're dancing in the aisles. They're high-fiving. They're celebrating. They're going bananas on Franklin Street.
Pass to Britt, 15 seconds to play. Up high to Page, gets a screen from Meeks. Page driving in on the left, high off the glass for two. Louisville with 7 seconds. Jones has it, goes left corner, Black's here for three. Back iron, 1 second to play, stick up, no! Carolina wins it! The Tar Heels win it! 72-71. 6 seconds to go. Pinson comes front court. Pinson to May for the win. Got it! Luke May! He got it! 0.3 of a second! Luke May gives Carolina the 75-73 lead. Are you kidding me?
Inside 30 overall. Love, top of the key. Oh! Big time delivery.
Here are your hosts, Josh Marlowe and Anthony Pagnotta.
Hello and welcome into another edition of the Four Corners podcast. We are powered by Carolina Electrical Services. Josh Anthony here with you guys on a Wednesday night. Here to recap Carolina's win over East Tennessee State that took place on Tuesday night, a 77-58 win for Carolina. And we're here to talk about that win for the Heels as they improved to 10-1 on the season. We'll take a look at the box score. You'll hear from head coach Hubert Davis on the win. We'll give our stat of the game and deliver thoughts, takeaways, hand out game balls, and so much more. So let's go ahead, get right into this game recap. Carolina, as I mentioned, they beat East Tennessee State 77-58 to improve to 10-1 and 8-0 at home so far this season. The first 10-1 start for Carolina since the 2017-2018 season. That, of course, was when Carolina was looking to defend their national championship. They would earn a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament before losing in the second round. They were led by Arizona transfer Henri Veesaar. He had 26 points on 10 of 11 shooting, the fourth best shooting performance by a UNC player in the history of the Smith Center. He led Carolina, as I mentioned, with those 26. Caleb Wilson was the only Tar Heel to score in double figures. He had 20 points on 6 of 12 shooting in a game where, like Saturday, Carolina came out sluggish, came out slow. It was 25-21 deep into the first half before Carolina would build a 38-30 lead at the break. They'd use a 7-0 run to open the second half, and eventually they would never look back and cruise to the 19-point victory, which saw Carolina hold an opponent under 75 points for the 11th straight game. They'll look to tie the school record of 12 games on Saturday against Ohio State. We talked so much going into the game about wanting to see a much more complete effort after an uneven performance against USC Upstate on Saturday. And while I do think Carolina was better in some regard, it still left a lot to be desired, I thought, with the way that Carolina played in the first half. They gave up 5 offensive rebounds. They, gave up some buckets late in the shot clock because they just didn't close out, didn't defend, so on and so forth. But all in all, when you look at the box score, it shows a 19-point win, and I think a lot to be happy about as we get near the end of non-conference play.
Yeah, I mean, I think you can be disappointed with how things started, and I think that certainly is something that a lot of Tar Heel fans are trying to figure out why exactly it's happening. I mean, this was a really close game for most of the first half. I mean, at times it almost felt like a back and forth affair between the two sides, and then Caleb Wilson has his dunk. That was the highlight reel of the night, and it seemed like from that point forward, everything sort of changed for Carolina. The effort level definitely picked up. You could tell the guys, defensively were locked in that second half, and everything really changed for Carolina. The game was being played at East Tennessee State's pace in that first half, and that was the third straight half that we've seen a team really control Carolina, because you go back, both halves against USC Upstate were played at their pace. And so what Carolina was able to do in the second half was, with more pressure, they were able to speed East Tennessee State up. It led to some turnovers. It led to some poor shots. And that's really what changed the game for Carolina ultimately. They started hitting some shots themselves to start that second half, but I thought it really began on that defensive end of the floor. And so, yeah, I mean, I'm with everybody. I'm a little frustrated about the fact that they can't put it together in a complete game. It seems like we haven't seen that really for most of the year, especially against some of the better mid-major opponents that they've played. Not, the teams like Central Arkansas and NC Central, who are just two of the worst teams in all of college basketball. When Carolina's faced, any sort of decent competition, it seems like somewhere along the way, they kind of get stuck and they have to figure out how to get out of it. I do think ultimately this is good for Carolina, because when they get into conference play, this is not going to be foreign territory for this group. They've been there before. Granted, it'll be against much tougher opponents altogether when you're facing them night to night in the ACC. But I definitely think that there are some positives that you take away from this game, especially with what you saw in the second half. And yeah, when you've got the best big duo in the country right now, it's hard to not be excited by what you see on the court night in and night out, even if it isn't exactly perfect.
I think it's important, for me to clarify, Saturday, I was disappointed with the effort. I thought the energy wasn't there. I didn't think they competed the way that this group has competed. To me, that wasn't the case last night, despite the slow start. I thought Carolina played hard. I just thought there was just some lack of communication. There was one time, Jared Stevens got caught up in a ball switch, and the ball gets reversed to the other side of the court, and Carolina's defense was flatlined. There was never, the defense never rotated, and there were some other instances where that happened. That's a good thing, because that can be corrected, that can be cleaned up. The effort thing, there's only so much a coach can do if their team isn't playing hard. But I did feel like last night in the first half, it was more of an execution thing as opposed to an effort thing. And once Carolina cleaned up their execution in the second half, I mean, the game was effectively over at the under 16 timeout of the first half, or of the second half. And that's something that this group has that last year's group didn't have. They do have the ability to go on game-changing runs and really game-ending runs. Even when they have their lulls, they're still – and that shows you how good this team can be, where they can have a 4-minute stretch where they're not playing up to par, but they can also have a 4-minute stretch where they do so much damage that the game is effectively over with how solid they are defensively. And that should be encouraging as we get, we got 2 non-con games left, and then it's ACC games the rest of the way. Because what was the biggest issue with Carolina a year ago? I mean, it felt like every game they played that they won in the final minute. They won in the final 2 minutes. Whereas this group, has really been able to put opponents away really outside of the win at Kentucky. And that's something that, you hope will carry over as we get deeper and deeper on into the season. Let's go ahead and dive into this box score. I'll pull it up for you guys watching back at home. It's a pretty one for Carolina. They shoot 54% from the field. They pretty much shot, in the upper 50s for the majority of the game. They were 27 of 50. On the flip side, they hold the Buccaneers to 38% shooting. They were 20 of 52. Carolina much more efficient from the three-point line than the final number would suggest. They end 8 of 25, but they were 8 for 21 before Hubert Davis turned, to his extended bench there in the final few minutes. So that does work out to 32% shooting. They hold East Tennessee State, mind you, to 30% shooting. They were 30 of 23. Free throw shooting collectively would show you that it was an issue. It was mainly an individual issue. Carolina 15 of 23 from the foul line. James Brown was 0 for 5 individually. So that number, if he just makes 2 or 3 of them, looks a lot different. So Carolina 65% shooting from the foul line. East Tennessee State 11 of 16 for a nice 69%. Both teams commit 7 turnovers. Both teams score 5 points off of turnovers. A much better rebounding performance in totality for Carolina. They out-rebound the Bucs 35-23, including 28-17 on the defensive glass and 7-6 on the offensive glass. Carolina will have the advantage in second chance points, 10-9. Both teams had 17 points off their bench. Carolina with the advantage in points in the paint, as you would expect with Wilson and Vesaar, 36-22. Fast break points favor of Carolina, 4-0. Blocks were even at 2 apiece. The Bucs did outsteal Carolina. They had 4 steals to UNC's 3. Carolina had 18 assists on 27 made baskets. Meanwhile, East Tennessee State with 11 assists on 20 of their made baskets. The game was tied 6 times. There were 4 different lead changes. But all in all, Carolina led for 31 minutes and 13 seconds. So that's a look at the box score. Before we get to the quote, because it kind of pertains to the passing, just kind of want to talk about it right here because I didn't put it down in an official takeaway. So Carolina with 18 assists on 27 made baskets, and they had a pretty big assist total on Saturday as well. The thing that Hubert Davis was pleased with the most, and this is where the conversation around Kyan Evans, I think, makes it tricky because he only scored 6 points, was 2 of 5 from the field. All 5 of his shots came from behind the three-point line, but he grabs 3 rebounds and has 6 assists against 0 turnovers. His last 2 games, he has 11 assists against 0 turnovers. Yes, we're begging him to score the ball more, and I still think this team needs his scoring. But I thought he set the tone last night with his unselfish play, looking, to pass up a good shot to create a great shot. And Hubert Davis pointed it out in his post-game press conference. He's their best passer in transition. Helps generate some easy points for Carolina. And I did think that he was the guy that set the tone for what was a pretty effective night for Carolina in terms of moving the ball. The ball didn't stick. It went inside out, side to side, and that's why they were able to shoot 54% from the field.
Yeah, I mean, when you look at it, I mean, what he was able to do, and he did all that in the first half. I mean, all of his scoring came in the first half. The assists, all 6 of them came in the first half, and that was really big for Carolina when they needed something sustainable. You got that guard play that you were looking for, that point guard play that you were looking for out of Kyan Evans. I mean, he played 29 minutes last night. That's the most that he's played here recently. But I thought he deserved those moments on the court. I thought he was playing at a high enough level where keeping him out there made the most sense. But, I mean, yeah, his ability to share the basketball, I think, was able to give Carolina some good looks there in the first half. And, I mean, yeah, you look back at that first half for Carolina, they shot the ball pretty well in that first half as well. I mean, if you're shooting the ball at a 63% clip in the first half, you made 14 of your 22 shots. That's definitely the type of day that you're looking for. So I thought he knew where he had to go with the basketball, and really everybody, as an extension off of him, was able to share the basketball very well. That's something that we've noticed, especially the last couple of games, that Carolina has been doing a really good job of, is not only passing the ball at a high rate where you don't have to worry about, creating those turnovers for your opponent, but also you're putting guys in advantageous positions to be able to take shots right away. It's not, hey, we're giving it out to you, at the top and we're expecting you to create your own space and make shots. These are, catch and shoot opportunities for guys that I think really are being taken advantage of. So, yeah, credit to him. I think that's the one thing about the Kyan Evans conversation that people just continue to get wrong, is especially when people are talking about the turnover issues that Carolina has at times, some of the, the inability to hold on to the basketball in certain situations in the first half of these games. It feels like everybody wants to immediately blame Kyan Evans and say, well, it's got to be his fault, when it's really not. He's done a tremendous job of taking care of the basketball and being able to share the basketball at a high rate at the same time. So that's the challenge about him, is that he's doing everything that you need your point guard to do outside of being able to score the ball consistently, which is something that we're still going to need from him moving forward. Hopefully he can find that either off the ball if Derek Dixon continues to improve, or on the ball if he's the guy that has to step up there at that point guard spot. But I'm loving what he's doing passing wise for Carolina, and it's really setting this offense up to be successful.
I thought he was in attack mode from word go last night. I thought it was what you need him to be. Even if he's not shooting, you want him just putting pressure on the defense. And I thought, there's so many times it feels like he just gets caught out on the perimeter and doesn't look to drive and kick. And when you drive, no, these guys don't want to leave Wilson or Vesaar, but they're going to crash. And then you just have these drop-off opportunities, or you can get those passes to the corner where, hopefully that's going to be Jonathan Powell more and more often, which is his favorite spot to shoot the three. I thought he did a much better job of that last night. And I felt like his threes, I think he had to force one up because of a shot clock issue, but I thought all of his threes were where they needed to be. Threes that he needs to take, and threes that I think the more that he takes, the more that he'll make as the season does move forward. But that sets up the quote from Hubert Davis, and something that we started alluding to really at Fort Myers and ever since then, was that as the competition got better, Caleb Wilson was going to start being double teamed. And we've seen development over the last 3 weeks of how he handles the double team. It's not just him, though, that's being doubled, because with what Big Henry's doing, now these teams, when Henry gets the ball, they want to double team him. But as Hubert Davis said in his post-game press conference, both of his big men, they're great passers out of the double.
One of the things that I think is allowing Caleb and Henry to be really good out there is, yes, they can score, but they're really good passers. So when you put two on the ball, like, they can find an open teammate, whether it's on the perimeter or a teammate cut to the basket. It's almost to our advantage putting two on the ball, because they're so gifted at passing the basketball, and they really trust their teammates to understand where they are, and very unselfish on the offensive end.
We alluded in the preseason that once we were getting the early returns out of practice, guys like Andrew Jones that cover the team in depth, they said, hey, look, Carolina, because of these two bigs, they could play with high-low. They can, put one at the foul line, one at the block, and really attack. I still think we were underrating how good these two guys are, because, what Hubert said is right. I mean, last night there was multiple times that, they collapsed on Henry, but because he's a skilled big man, and you could tell he was taught right because he keeps the ball up, he's able to maneuver and pass out of it. And usually, if there's two guys on the ball, what does that mean? I mean, someone's open, and you're finding that open guy every single time. There are times where you need them to play through that double team. And because they're so big, fast, strong, Caleb Wilson can jump out of the gym, they can shoot it, and then sometimes just play volleyball with it, go get their offensive rebound, put back dunk, no matter what that is. But that's an underrated thing for this team. And it's why the shot creation is as good as it's been. Because these two guys, their IQ, I don't think we give them enough credit. Like, yes, they're gifted. and they're talented and they play extremely hard. They've also got a feel for the game that we haven't seen big men like since really the two I've compared them to, since John Henson and Tyler Zeller have this kind of just IQ of just what to do with the ball, and it's why they're not point forwards, but it's why you can put either one of them at the elbow and run your offense through them. And it's just a real benefit for Carolina, and I think it's something that as this offense continues to evolve and Hubert Davis really figures out his rotations, it'll benefit everybody moving forward because there aren't going to be many teams that can afford to double team Carolina because of the way these two guys play. You're going to have to play 5-on-5, and eventually these guys will be able to break their guys down off the dribble and get to the lane for layups, dunks, or fouls.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing is that really I think teams believe that if you double them the correct way, it's going to lead to turnovers. But we haven't really seen that, especially as the season has gone along. We've seen these guys be able to adjust to the double teams that are being thrown their way. And their ability to pass out of it is just tremendous. I mean, you're setting guys up not only for, to move the ball around and eventually find that open guy. I mean, these guys are finding that open guy sometimes themselves because of how good they are passing out of things. So, I mean, that's what you're looking for from your big men, and they work so well together. That's the other thing, too, is passing to each other. They do such a great job of that. But, I mean, yeah, I can't remember the last time that you had a big man like Henri Veesaar, or even, I guess you wouldn't label him as a point forward, but, he certainly is extremely athletic to the point where you could run your offense through Caleb Wilson and it's going to be perfectly fine. I mean, it's hard to remember a recent time where you saw that for Carolina, because even you go back to the team that won a national championship. Yes, that team would play through its bigs at times, but you had a guy like Joel Berry who was there to sort of carry you when those big men weren't necessarily as successful as they needed to be night in and night out. This duo, I mean, yeah, they are carrying this team right now. I mean, you look at a game like this, I mean, no one else scored more than 7 points in this game, but these guys are taking everything, putting it on their shoulders, and, really, I'm not going to say dragging this team to a victory because they won by 19 points, but I mean, they certainly are the big reason why Carolina is so successful. And you look at the efficiency that you're starting to see from these guys. And Caleb Wilson, 6 of 12 from the field, 50%. You're going to take that just about any night of the year. And you're seeing what he's doing at the foul line. I mean, the fact that he's been able to get there as often as he has is such a weapon for Carolina. And even though he isn't perfect in terms of the free throw percentage, he's made 5 or more free throws in every game that he has played so far in his career. That's 11 straight. I went back, looked. They had a stat comparing him to Tyler Hansborough in that area. Hansborough, the most that I ever saw during his career was a 10-game streak. So that shows you how rarefied what he's doing is, because Tyler Hansborough was a guy that got to the foul line more than just about any big man that we can remember at Carolina. And then for Henry, I mean, yeah, the efficiency that he's got is just amazing. I mean, you got to think he did not miss a shot inside of the arc last night. Everything that he looked at from 2-point range was going in. And I think we've seen the moments where he's a guy that finishes strong inside. That's something that was definitely needed from a Carolina big man, because we had moments where, Armando Bacot didn't necessarily finish at the highest rate on the inside at certain times. Van Allen Lubin last year had some struggles finishing on the inside at times. Henri Veesaar is a guy that does not struggle in that area. If you get to a certain point on the floor, he's going to be able to put the ball in the basket, and he can get to just about anywhere that he wants to go because he is so athletic with the basketball. He's, so dynamic that people are not even really able to stay in front of him when he gets into that dribble drive mindset that he has. And that's something that, it's hard to go back and find a big man that could do some of the things that he's able to do with the basketball in his hands. So, I mean, he is just tremendous. I think last night was a big statement for him that if anybody was questioning whether or not he is on the same page, as Caleb Wilson in terms of being an all ACC caliber type of player, being in the conversation to potentially be an All-American, he showed last night that he certainly needs to be in that conversation, because the way that both of those guys are playing right now is the reason why Carolina is 10-1 through this first part of the season.
Let's run through the stat of the game because I've got more I want to talk about with Big Henry. I went with turnovers because we didn't really talk about enough going into the game, and that was my fault. But, East Tennessee State forced over, entering the game over 15 turnovers per game. Their turnover percent rate in terms of turnovers forced was top 45 in the country. And you could see why. They tactically did a lot of things differently. They also grab and reach a lot. And it's why they were in foul trouble despite their head coach believing they didn't foul as many times as they got whistled for it. But Carolina protected the basketball. They just commit 7 turnovers. On the flip side, they only forced 7, but, they got one in the second half that led to a breakaway layup. And they were the turnovers that Carolina felt like they needed to just when the game was kind of in the balance. And so really this was more about Carolina protecting the ball against a team that, throws a lot of different looks at you to begin with, but also is very handsy. And Carolina handled all that in a better way than maybe they would have, 2-3 weeks ago. Let's get to the takeaways because I want to start with Vesaar. What was interesting was, he was on the radio show on Monday. It was the first edition of Hubert Davis Live, and kind of what they're doing, kind of what they do with football season is they're going to try to get a player on the show every now and again to talk about their ongoing season. And, if you go and listen to his comments when he was asked about what led him to Carolina, he basically alluded to he didn't like the way he was used at Arizona. He had to split time. They basically rotated 2 bigs. That's why he played just 20 minutes per game. But all the things that I was excited about him offensively, remember I raved about him being a screener, a pick and popper, and he could do those, and he does them very well. But he wasn't used the way that you see him be used here, and he said that as much as anything is what led him here, was the way that he was told he was going to be used. And, what it's done so far is fuel him to be Carolina's, second leading scorer, second leading rebounder. You could argue he's as vocal a leader as anyone on this team. It helps that he could speak 2 different languages, so he could probably say things when guys mess up that they don't know what he's saying to them. I think Hubert Davis has alluded that a few times where he has said something in Estonian that he doesn't know what he's saying. He just assumes it's probably something that he doesn't want to repeat because our head coach doesn't cuss. But I also think, we knew when he arrived, the NBA was interested in him. But I think Carolina was hoping, fingers crossed, praying to the gods, would love to have him for 2 years. I don't see a situation like if this play keeps up, he's playing his way into one and done status as a Tar Heel transfer. And having the same type of impact that I think Brady Manick had during his lone season at Carolina as a transfer, but Brady's was over a 6-week span. We're looking at this being maybe the most impactful transfer of this era of college basketball, which is saying something with how impactful Brady Manick was, how impactful Harrison Ingram was, and Cormac Ryan, but as equally or as good as Caleb Wilson has been, and God knows he's been good, Big Henry's been equally as good, as equally important, and the two combined are fueling this team. And I think Vesaar is playing himself into first-round NBA draft territory, which is something that, a lot of Carolina fans put a lot of stock in because they want to see this team, this program develop NBA talent on a much more regular basis than we've seen the last handful of years.
Yeah, I mean, look, I'm trying to find where he is at in some of these. He looks right here, end of the first round, going to the Washington Wizards with the 30th pick in a Bleacher Report mock draft that was just released earlier today. So you're right, he is starting to get some of that first round buzz. I wasn't sure whether or not he was actually getting first round looks or just in that second round. But I mean, that's coming from Jonathan Wasserman, a guy who is pretty locked in on the NBA draft and everything like that. I mean, if he's getting that type of opportunity, you would feel like he would probably have to go, especially because the thing about the NBA that we know, the NBA draft more than anything, is it's about youth. That's why you see guys that leave so early, is because they value how young you are and how much you can be molded as a prospect. With him, if he stays for another year, he seems like he's a pretty complete product. Now, does that mean that is a guy that couldn't get drafted decently high? No, of course not. I mean, look at Zach Edey. He stayed 4 years at Purdue and comes out and goes inside the top 10. But you know that he is a pretty complete prospect, and certain teams will bow out on that. So, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what he ends up doing come draft time. But, I mean, yeah, I think the thing that's really amazing is that nobody really expected what is going on right now. I mean, we thought he had a chance to be a good big man for Carolina. I think, one of the things we talked about coming into the season was we just didn't know what exactly you were getting out of him. Would he be a guy that would be able to change games? Because when in his time in Arizona, we didn't see it because we didn't see him enough on the floor. We only saw him for 20 minutes per game. And so, the fact that he was splitting time last year at Arizona really tells you why Arizona is not as successful as they probably should be with some of the runs that they've had recently. Now, they look like a really good team again this year. Maybe this is the year that they actually break through. But, I mean, yeah, that's an interesting choice not to use a guy that's this talented, and that we were hearing already from some people, this guy's going to the NBA. It's just a matter of where he's actually going to be selected when he goes to the NBA draft. He could have gone this past year and probably been a guy that was selected late in the second round and had to fight his way to get to the NBA through the G League or through overseas leagues, whatever. But I think he made the right decision by coming to Carolina, because this allows him to showcase that ability to really take over games. And that's what you saw last night. You saw a guy that played, I mean, we said it, not the whole, not everybody on this team played a consistent 40 minutes last night. Henri Veesaar did. I mean, he was the best player on the court for the entire night. He had 13 points in the first half. He had 13 points in the second half. When Carolina needs him to carry them at times, we've seen it this year. There are moments where Caleb Wilson has to carry this team, but there are moments where Henry has to carry this team as well. And he has done it every time that Carolina has needed him to. It's just, I mean, so impressive, the amount of different things that he can do out of that 5 spot. And I also, one of the things that doesn't get talked about nearly enough, we're talking about what he does on the offensive end. What he's doing on the defensive end of the floor, too, is just changing everything for Carolina, because his ability, his athleticism to be able to play further out on the perimeter, you're not afraid of this guy getting switched on to somebody, because you know that he's still going to be able to defend the rim and protect the basket at a pretty high rate. Yeah, there are times where teams are going to be able to draw fouls off of him, but it's not at a high rate. He does a great job of defending without fouling. So, I mean, this dude is so complete. I could see why he's starting to get some of that hype for the NBA. And, man, I mean, he's one of the reasons why you feel so good about this Carolina team at this point in the season, even without the backcourt being in the best spot or being where we thought it was going to be. That could change when Seth Trimble comes back, if he's playing at the rate that many people believe he will be playing at. But these two bigs, I mean, right now, they are just absolutely dominating, and it's so exciting to watch.
Second thing I wrote down, in terms of a takeaway, I thought Hubert's adjustments at halftime were really a difference maker for Carolina in terms of really putting the game away by the first media timeout. of the second half. I mean, you come out on a 7-0 run, that 8-point lead balloons to 15. ETSU, they call timeout. And then by the time we got to the media timeout, the game was all but over. And there was two things that he changed. He put Jonathan Powell on the floor to start the second half because Luka Bogovac, I mean, quite literally had a nothing stat line. He had no shots, no rebounds, no assists. He quite literally did nothing in his first 9 minutes. And with Jonathan Powell, no, it wasn't his best shooting night, just 2 of 8 from the field. Was one of 6 from behind the 3-point line. But his energy, I thought, changed the game. His ability to pressure the ball, to just, when he got a rebound, just run it up the defense's back. Carolina looks different. They play faster with him on the floor. And then the extending of the defense and finally just getting the ball out of, their guards' hands, because East Tennessee State was content to just stand there and dribble the ball, throw 6, 7, 8 seconds on the shot clock, and then run their offense and get a quality look. And more often than not, it felt like they were making them, and that's why the game was so close. Hubert said he wasn't thrilled with the way that they did some of their run and jump stuff on Saturday. I thought it was much better last night. And then I thought the insertion of Jonathan Powell was just another example of this. He's got, and look, I know it's difficult because he doesn't have the rotation where you want it to be, because I believe in my heart when Trimble comes back, Stevenson's not going to start. He's moving to the 4 to 5. That's going to open up minutes, I think, for Jonathan Powell. But he needs to be on the court more. He needs to play 24-plus minutes a night moving forward for Carolina. But probably the most frustrating thing, and it's something I was kind of talking about throughout my time at the station today, was this game was played at the opponent's pace in our gym. And it felt like they finally just said, the heck with that. We're going to get this game going up and down. We want to play in the open floor. And you finally saw the full court press. And so I want more aggression from Hubert Davis. I want more aggression in that mentality. But I thought those changes that he made at halftime were a big difference in Carolina being able to put the game away as early as they did in the final 20 minutes.
Well, I mean, yeah, it really starts with going with Powell to start the second half, because that's not usually something that you see from him. Usually he throws the starting lineup back out there, and we're going to let it ride for a little bit here before we decide to throw a couple of changes in there. We're at least going to wait until that first media timeout. And he said, you know what? Luka has really brought us nothing today. Jonathan Powell is doing everything that he possibly can to make some sort of impact on the floor. So why don't we roll with him? And it's not to say that Luka wasn't giving effort or anything like that. We just know that Luka is not the defender that Jonathan Powell is. That was one thing that we talked about a little bit with him when he came over from West Virginia, but probably not enough, is that he really, I mean, his defensive rating when he was at West Virginia was really, really solid. And we talked about him more of just being that three-point shooter, and I think everybody just sort of became comfortable with that. Oh, this is a guy that's not necessarily going to defend at a high level, but we know that he's going to be someone that's going to be able to knock down shots from the outside. Well, in this game, he's not able to knock down shots from the outside. Just one goes down from the outside for him, but he's able to really affect the game defensively by what he's doing. I mean, what he was doing off ball, it was pointed out by Terrence Oglesby, was really changing the game for Carolina. It did not allow East Tennessee State's best players to get the ball in their hands. And so, I mean, yeah, when you're able to do that, when you're able to affect what they're doing by running through ball screens and everything like that, that's something that is, impossible to keep off the floor. And I think that's something that they're going to have to talk about moving forward. He played a pretty significant amount of minutes in this game, and I think that's probably the role that you would expect him in. I mean, 24 minutes last night. I mean, yeah, that's probably where you're hoping that he's going to be at for the rest of the season, if possible, because he's just so effective when he's out there. It might not be, the most every single night on the offensive end of the floor that he has that effect. But remember, this is a guy that just had 17 in the game against USC Upstate. So even though the offensive, success isn't consistent, what he's able to do defensively is. So I commend Hubert Davis for that. And then, what they were able to do pressure-wise, creating a couple of turnovers early in the half, which allows them to sort of get out on the run and change the pace of the game. That was really what started to turn the tide for Carolina. And then they do it again later on. I mean, you talked about the 7-0 run to begin the half. Well, then you have a 15-0 run where Carolina just goes off and completely eliminates any chance for East Tennessee State to get back into this game. I thought that was something that, was sparked by what they were doing on the defensive end of the floor. A team that was able to get where they wanted to go for most of that first half were pulling down offensive rebounds that would lead to second chance points. I mean, they had 5 offensive rebounds. They turned it into 9 second chance points. That's pretty efficient. And so, Carolina really turned up the pressure, and it just changed everything for them on that end of the floor. And so, commend Hubert Davis for that. I know that's for some people that's going to be difficult, but you have to. That's one thing that we know about this team is that, man, they may not play great in first halves, but when they go into that locker room and they hear from their head coach, something changes pretty quickly for this group. And you saw it again last night, and that's why Carolina was able to win by as comfortable a margin as they were able to.
The last takeaway that I wrote down is, and it helps because you got more scoring from Derek Dixon in this game than you did on Saturday. But, Carolina gets 17 points from their bench. And look at the bench minutes for guys last night. Derek Dixon, 14. Jaden Young plays 13 minutes, was plus 19 in his time on the floor. Isaiah Dennis played the final 4 minutes. Jonathan Powell played 24. James Brown plays 7. Zayden High, he gets listed with 3 minutes. Hubert Davis, back-to-back games that James Brown's been the first big off the bench. He's still seeking more consistency out of either him or Zayden. And it feels like right now he trusts James Brown more because James Brown plays with more energy, is much more of a threat as an offensive rebounder. I think competes defensively. Digga Stern talking to when he came out after his first stint of action last night. But like when Zayden High entered the game, 2 things happen. He gets beat for an offensive rebound that gets put back in for a layup, and he follows that up by committing a turnover. Whether you want to blame Caleb Wilson for not sealing his defender or not, he put the ball in harm's way. And so it appears that James Brown has kind of earned more trust right now from Hubert and this coaching staff. But, we talk so much about how we believed in the depth of this roster. And we were kind of waiting for it to start showing up. I love the Jaden Young addition probably more than anybody. I raved about him, with you. I raved about him on a interview on a podcast I did with Shade, so on and so forth. And the last 2 games, I thought he's been really effective for Carolina. I thought his defensive energy on the perimeter, because he's here to shoot, but he's competing defensively. He's running through ball screens. He's being there whenever he's tracing his defender and not allowing, whoever it is to get a clean look. He's contesting shots, so on and so forth. And that's the sign of a true team, where you have guys that can impact the game without scoring the ball. And then it feels like that's what Carolina has. With Powell, with Dixon, those guys can score. They can shoot it from the outside. Powell can be a guy in transition. We've seen Dixon, with what he did at Kentucky. He can be a guy in the half court that takes his man off the dribble, gets to the rim, layup, foul, so on and so forth. But you're quietly getting contributions as well from Brown, back-to-back games, and Jaden Young. That really makes you believe even more in this group, because there's going to be a game where they're going to need these guys to play. there's going to be a game where Carolina's just in foul trouble beyond belief. That's just, you play 40 of these games, that's going to happen. And in previous years, you didn't trust those guys to play those minutes. And I'm not saying that there's 100% trust there. It's still a little bit wonky when it's James Brown and Zayden High out there on the floor, but you're in a better spot than you were at different times last year or, 3 years ago when you had the Pete Nance team. And so I think that's been the big benefit of playing the schedule, is that it's allowed Hubert Davis to tinker more and experiment more. And it feels like as we get closer to the end of non-conference season, Carolina has the legitimate depth we talked about all summer long.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing that I think is really encouraging, is that we thought this team was deep. And we've talked about how, guys that you can trust on this group are, Dixon and Powell, and eventually you would get someone to join them from the starting lineup whenever Seth Trimble comes back. And so there you go. You've got 8. Well, now you're looking at maybe possibly having 10, figuring out who that big man is between those two. I think, this is going to be a battle that's still going to go into ACC play. But I think they're starting to lean more James Brown. As you said, I think it's really the energy that is contagious when he's on the floor. And the thing is that, the energy is it's more contrived than let's say what you see from a guy like Zayden High, where Zayden High is, we've talked about it. He is just one of the craziest basketball players that you will see in terms of the up and downs. He's the Tasmanian devil when he's out there on the court. 1 minute he's out there doing something great. He's scoring the basketball on the inside. He's fighting through contact and throwing up a shot that shouldn't go in. Or, then you have the downside where he gets into foul trouble multiple times. He's, just all over the place. As you talked about last night, there were a couple of moments where he's just out of position, not where he needs to be. He's forcing a ball into somewhere where it doesn't need to be forced, and ends up in a turnover. Those are the types of things that are frustrating with him, and probably part of the reason why James Brown is receiving a little bit more run. But Jaden Young, if that's a guy that can become a little more consistent for you, having that guy out there where if, let's say, guys aren't shooting the ball great for Carolina, the main contributors that you have on the perimeter, well, Jaden Young could be a guy that you could turn to as well and say, let's see if he's got something for him tonight. And you never know. If he does have something for him, all of a sudden Carolina's got a guy that can knock down shots from the perimeter. And we saw, he was another guy that, very similar to Kyan Evans, really started to take off late last year. That was really where he started to find himself. And maybe that's going to be the same thing here for Carolina once they get into ACC play. That's really where he's going to start to extend his role, because he's just going to be too hard to keep off the floor. But I thought, what you saw the last couple of games from him have been encouraging. He's no longer just that player that Hubert puts in because he's angry. He's a guy that now, hey, there's a little bit of something to his game. So hopefully that continues to expand. But yeah, any concerns that this team isn't going to be deep, isn't going to have the depth that we thought that they were going to have in the preseason, all of that should be out the window now, because you've got plenty of depth at your disposal, at least 8 guys, potentially 9 or 10 that you can play in a single game, which is a far cry from where Carolina has been for the last handful of years.
All right, let's hand out some game balls, and then we'll get out of this edition of the podcast. I'll do the honors, and I'll go first, and I'll take the layup from this game. Give me Henri Veesaar and his 26 points, 10 of 11 shooting. He was 2 of 3 from 3, 4 of 4 from the foul line, 8 rebounds, 2 assists, 1 foul, 1 turnover. He scored 26 points in 28 minutes last night for Carolina. The 26 points, a career high. His 10 of 11 shooting, the 4th best shooting performance by a Tar Heel in the history of the Dean Dome. He seemed pretty fired up when he was on the radio show on Monday, because, he loved some plays out there against USC Upstate. He was especially fired up for the puppy race that was at halftime, even though he was going to be in the locker room because he loves dog. He loves dogs. Well, he played like a dog on Tuesday night. He was the best player on the floor. Henri Veesaar gets my game ball for the win over East Tennessee State.
Yeah, and I'd go with the other layup of the group here. I mean, both of these guys really layups in this game where nobody else scored more than 7 points. Caleb Wilson, 20 points on 6 of 12 shooting, 1 of 2 from beyond the arc. Again, not showing the range off a ton, but it's definitely there. And it's part of the reason why he's trending up some of these draft boards is because not only the success that we're seeing inside the arc, he's showing you that every once in a while he can step out there and knock down a 3. And that's something that can be worked on in his game moving forward. 7 of 10 from the foul line, just a guy that knows how to get to the line, get some of those easy points on the board for Carolina, especially when they need it. He had 8 rebounds in the game. 3 of them were offensive rebounds. So pulled down a couple of very important ones on that end of the floor for Carolina to keep possessions alive for the team. 2 assists in this game, only had 1 turnover, did have 1 steal in 27 minutes on the floor. So didn't have to play nearly as extensively as some of the other games that he's played in this year, but was incredibly effective for Carolina and just continues to show how special of a freshman he is. I mean, you look at him right now, this game continues to contribute to the scoring, his scoring average for this season. It raises it once again. And so, he's about half a point clear, maybe a little bit more than half a point clear now of Tyler Hansborough's average as a freshman back in 2005, where or 2006, where it was a season where he averaged 18.9 points per game. That's the most ever averaged by a Tar Heel freshman, and it looks like Caleb Wilson is on pace to be able to surpass that, which would show you just how special of a season this is for the young freshman.
Yeah, and it's going to lead us to a conversation in one of our next episodes here on the Four Corners podcast. That's going to wrap it up, though, for this edition of the pod. In the meantime, we encourage you guys to visit the website, HeelToughBlog.com. Coverage of this game can be found on the website. I, of course, had you ready to go with the preview because I was in Chapel Hill. Anthony did the honors. He wrote the recap. You can go and get his thoughts and takeaways from Carolina's win last night. I'll be back with you guys on Saturday, getting you ready for Carolina and Ohio State and what could very well be the last ever CBS Sports Classic as I continue to take you through the basketball season. We're also keeping you covered with all things Carolina football. A pretty significant transfer hit the portal today in the form of Tyler Thompson. Anthony has you covered with that news, and we'll continue to have you covered all off season long. We just encourage you guys to get the website, HeelToughBlog.com, the latest and best coverage of Carolina basketball and Tar Heel football. As for the podcast, you guys know where to find us. Every major podcasting platform, just search the Four Corners Podcast and we'll pop up. There, we encourage you guys to rate, review, and subscribe. That way you don't miss any editions of the show throughout the remainder of the season. And we've got a busy schedule. We've got to do a podcast because we got an update on the Smith Center from Inside Carolina, a very detailed update. Carolina scheduled a home-and-home with an SEC opponent, so their non-conference schedule for next year is coming together. So we got to do an episode about that. And then, of course, we got to get you ready for the Ohio State game as well. So 2 more podcasts coming your way before Saturday. Hit that subscribe button. That way you don't miss either of those 2 episodes. If you follow the show on the digital platform, best way to keep up with us, like and follow the Facebook page at Heel Tough Blog. Subscribe to the YouTube channel at Heel Tough Blog. We'd love to get to 600 subscribers by Christmas. Or you can follow me on Twitter at HTB_Josh. And the second that we go live, you'll get a notification set to your phone, and you can jump in and be a part of our conversation. But with that, folks, it is going to wrap up this edition of the show. I want to thank Anthony once again for hosting with me. We want to thank you guys for both watching and listening. And as always, go Tar Heels.